Shalom Aleichem Chevra. I'm sorry for the delay. Baruch Hashem, I was in Eretz Yisrael the past week, so now we are jumping back into the recordings of Likutei Halachos, where we began Reb Nosson explaining, based on Reb Nachman's Torah, of the Nekuda Tova, finding that good point. So Reb Nosson's explaining the laws of waking up in the morning, that a person needs to wake up with strength, Eskaber Ka'ari, Shivisi Hashem L'nagdi Summit, to find Hashem, not just generally in the world, but inside each and every one of us. And that's what enables us to wake up. We said that when a person's sleeping, that's the aspect of a person feeling like they have nothing good in them anymore. Rabim oimrim lanafshi ein yeshuas alei b'likim seli. You have no hope. And that's the concept of ani shachavti ve'ishana. I laid down and I fell asleep. But then hakitzaisi ki Hashem yismacheni. There's also an aspect of waking up with the realization ki Hashem yismacheni. I have a good point inside of me. I have a nekuda tova that's never ever extinguished. And that's the real me, and that enables a person to wake up, and that enables a person to sing. And we discussed how that's sort of symbolized in the contribution that each and every person makes to the Mishkan, that ultimately it's just the gathering of all of our good points, that even though, like we mentioned in previous recordings, it was an aspect of Ani Shena, where it looked like we were sleeping, but Velibi error, there's a part of us that's always awake. Although it looked like Shchaira Ani, we were darkened by the experience of the Likutei Egal. The real truth is V'nava b'masa ha-mishkan, where each and every person is contributing their good point to the construction of the Mishkan. So we continue where Reb Nosson is explaining now the beginning of the davening, that all continues with this very point, because it's ultimately supposed to be like a system, a program, to enable us to enter into this consciousness, to wake up this awareness. And that's what the whole tefillah of Shachris is. So Reb Nosson says you begin with karbanos, where a person is reading this concept of the karbanos that we would bring, and a person is reading all of those different elements. And Reb Nosson says over here that when a person is saying the karbanos, it's dafka bringing these concepts that a person sees in the siddur through our dibur, into our speech, through our mouth. And Reb Nosson says it's very important to lift up and elevate that aspect of the nekuda tova that's hidden into our mouths specifically, to lift it up, which is what we do with a karban, right? We channel that animal that's mute, that can't speak, and we bring it up to the level of the human being. But keep in mind that it isn't just bringing the animal up to the level of the human being. The animal, as the Perditchavar, as the Riyah Kaddish tells us, the animal eats grass. Grass grows on the inanimate earth. And so essentially when a person is bringing a karban and elevating it into our avodah, so ultimately you're elevating at the very same moment the ground on which grew the grass that was eaten by the animal. And so it's an elevation for all three lower elements of creation: inanimate, plant life, animals, and you're lifting it up to the aspect of the human being, which is the aspect of medaber. And says Reb Nosson, this itself reflects the concept of revealing the nekuda tova, because the pasuk says in Tehillim, "Ne'elamti dumia," I was completely silent and mute, hechishesi mitayv, and I was withheld from goodness. Says Reb Nosson, because to be withheld from goodness, to feel like a person has lost every little tiny spark of goodness inside of them, to feel like a person is shchaira ani, darkened, to feel like a person is ani yeshena, or the person is mamish sleeping, ein yeshuas alei b'likim sela, where a person feels like they have no hope, that's an aspect of ne'elamti dumia. That's an aspect of not being able to talk. It's like a person feels like an animal. It's like they're not even human anymore, because hechashesi mitayv, I was silent mitayv, because I couldn't find that nekuda tova, I couldn't find that goodness. And that's the aspect, says Reb Nosson, of the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Yanasi b'chag v'asela b'seisra mandrega, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, my dove, which is a reference to the holiness of Am Yisrael, is b'chag v'asela, is like trapped in the cleft of the rock, b'seisra madrega, hidden in a very low place. And the Yona Tama, that's the aspect of the Nekuda Tova that gets hidden. And it's b'chag v'asela b'seisra madrega, it's hidden. And then the pasuk continues, Hashem says, Hareinias marech, let me see your beauty. That each and every one of us is supposed to awaken that good point. Hashmi'inias koilech, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I want to hear your voice, meaning I want to hear your speech, meaning this is the aspect of Karbanos, to lift up the lowest places and to channel them up and to awaken the humanity inside of them, to give it a voice. Hashminias koilech, let me hear your voice, says Hashem. Ki koilech arev u'marach nave, because you're beautiful, and your nakuda that you have inside of you is beautiful, and it shouldn't be hidden, and it shouldn't be concealed, and it shouldn't be an aspect of this bechin of ne'elamti dumiach ishesi mitayv, I was silent, withheld from recognizing the Nakuda Tova. But rather, it comes to dibor, it comes to speech, which is the concept of the carbon, and this is all wrapped up into the karbanos with which we begin davening. And that's the aspect of the pasuk that continues, Hayesheves baganim chaver makshivim l'koilech hashmiini, those who sit in the garden, chaver makshivim, friends who are listening to one another, and listening l'koilech, to your voice, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hashmiini, let us hear you. And Rashi says, Hayesheves beganim, Rashi says, beino umais, those who sit among the nations of the world, meaning those who sit and feel like they're no longer Jewish anymore, that they've lost touch with their inherent Jewish holiness. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Chaver makshivim l'koilech. I'm not fooled by the fact that on the outside it looks like Yesheves beganim, that on the outside it looks like Shchayra Ani, that on the outside it looks like Ani Yeshena, that on the outside it seems that a person's fallen into being convinced that Rabim Oimrim Lanafshi Ein Yeshua Salei Balikim Sela, the many that say to me and to say to my soul, to the Jew's soul, there's no hope for you anymore. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not fooled. He says, okay, Hayesheves Bagad, and that's what it looks like on the outside. But the truth is, Chaver Makshivim. Hashem says we're still friends. Hashem says there's still a inextinguishable flame inside of you, that a holy spark, and Hashmi'ini, Hashem says, let me hear you. Channel that aspect of the carbon, which is the elevation from inanimate to plant life to animals, and then lift it up to humans. Give that a voice, reveal your Nakuda Tova, so that ultimately that can be a hemshech, a continuation of the very concept of waking up from that place of Ani Yeshena, to recognize and reveal that in truth, V'li bi'er. My heart is open. האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני